Okay, I've seen all over the internet these like really cute, like fitted cropped vests, and I even have a couple of them on my mood boards for fall. So I was thinking I'm gonna do one of those like fitted vests, but the category is Miss Frizzle teaching the children about astrology. Right? So I did a little sketch. I'm thinking of doing like a granny square vest, but the granny squares are not going to be just regular granny squares. They're going to have like stars and moons on them. And I'm thinking the color scheme can be very like classical, like wizard colors. So like purples and yellows. I'm thinking of doing buttons instead of like a lace up situation because I don't want to take 10 minutes to put on a vest, you know what I'm saying? So we're gonna do buttons for my sanity. Oh, and I'm gonna do a little ruffle situation for extra, you know? Okay, let's just talk about the granny squares. I wound up making 14 moon granny squares and 13 star granny squares. So both side panels and the back panel are each 3x3 squares. I didn't measure myself, but I just know that like this will fit and like look pretty fitted. I don't want this to be oversized. I want this to be like pretty fitted vest. So if you're larger than me, you can make more. And if you're smaller than me, you can make less. I'm roughly a mid-sized gal, all right? Also, the yarn that I'm just using this purple yarn. It's a size 4 weight yarn, and it's literally just a Craft Smart yarn that you can get at Michael's. This is honestly just random yarn that like someone gifted me. I'm gonna guess and say it's a size 3 weight yarn. It is a little bit thinner than my purple yarn. Also with this yellow, it was like a white to yellow ombre. So some of my granny squares came out more white than yellow, which is like whatever, but I wish it was a little more yellow. So for my moon and star granny squares, I did not come up with the patterns for these. I found patterns on YouTube and I'll link them down below, but I did have to make some slight modifications, so that's what I'm talking about now. So for the moon granny squares, I used a pattern by Yarntopia by Nadia here on YouTube. The only modification that I had to make for this is that she used a size 5mm hook and I used a size 4mm hook. I just wanted to make these like as small as possible to get like as much patterny, starry, moony goodness as I could, you know? I didn't do as many rows as her. After I made my moon, I just did the trim around the moon and then one more row just to make it look nice and square. And the moon granny square is 3 inches tall and 3 inches wide. So those are the measurements for her. So for my star granny square, I used a pattern by Crochet by Malham, and she uses a 4.5mm hook. I actually wound up using a 3.5mm hook because I wanted this to match the dimensions of my moon granny square. The star granny square that she makes is just like a lot bigger than what I was going for. In the center of her star, when she first starts off, she makes a magic circle and then she does 14 double crochets. I made a magic circle and I did 14 single crochets to make the center a little smaller so it would match the dimensions of my moon better. And then also I didn't do as many rows of the trim around my granny square like she did. So I did one row of the trim around the star and then I did just one more row after that and then I stopped. And then the measurements for the star wound up being just a little over 3 inches. So the star granny squares are just like a hair bigger than my moon granny squares, but I think once I seam everything together, we'll be good. So time to seam. So I've laid out my back piece, and as you can see, my moons are technically backwards. When I'm done seaming and I flip this over, then they'll look correct. For me, I like to seam using a flat slip stitch method, but you can seam in whatever method that you like to seam in. The world is your oyster. This is what I like doing, but seriously, do whatever you like to do, what makes you feel most comfortable. I'm gonna seam up my back panel and my side panels, and I'll meet you back here when I have everything seamed up and ready to go. So I have my back piece and my 2 side panels So now I'm just gonna seam these guys together, and this is a part where it just looks like a giant rectangle, and I question every decision that I've made. Okay, so this is what I have so far. It's all folded up, and I just roughly put it on my body and marked out where I want my straps to go. And then I also am going to make them about 17 inches long. So from where I have my stitch marker, you can see it's at the end of the first granny square in the front. So it's gonna be 8 across. So I'm just going to attach my hook, chain 1, and just half double crochet in the same stitch just to get me going. Yeah, that looks good. So 1, where am I? 2. Okay, then I'm gonna chain 1, turn my work, and I'm just gonna keep half double crocheting all the way up until I reach 17 inches. It should be 8 half double crochets across and then 17 inches long. And I'll meet you back here when I'm done and we can attach it to the back. So I've crocheted 42 rows of half double crochet, and now I'm going to attach my strap onto the back of my vest. So with my first strap, I kind of skipped a granny square and then put my strap right on the first part of the next star granny square. So that's exactly what I'm going to do for this strap as well. I'm just going to skip over my moon and attach it right on the beginning of the next star granny square. And after crocheting the entire strap, I just seamed it onto the back of the vest using a slip stitch. And now I have my straps attached. Okay, so here's the thing. I think the vest is looking good, but I just think I need to add a trim around the granny squares. They just look a little wobbly, and I just think if I added like a single crochet trim, it would just make everything look a little bit more uniform. I'm not surprised about this. I'm going to just add a single crochet border around the entirety of the vest and down the middle of the vest where my buttons are gonna go. But for the bottom of the vest, I'm gonna add like a little scalloped detail. So I'm just going to single crochet around the entirety of the vest except for the bottom, and I'll be back to show you how to make a little scalloped detail. That's the plan. BRB. I'll be back when I'm scalloping. Okay, my apologies if you hear any chickens clucking in the background. They just tend to be a little loud. Anyway, so I've finished up my single crochet stitch, which kind of evened everything out a little bit, made everything a little smoother. My hook is still attached. So now it's time to do a little scalloped trim. We're gonna slip stitch, skip a stitch, then we're going to single crochet 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we're going to skip a stitch, then slip stitch, and we have this little scallop. So let's do that one more time. So we just slip stitch, we're going to skip a stitch, and then single crochet 5 times into 1 stitch. 1, 2, 5. Then we're going to skip a stitch, then we're going to slip stitch, then we're going to skip a stitch and single crochet 5 times in 1 stitch. And that creates just like a cute little scalloped edge to just kind of finish off the bottom portion and just add a little bit more interest without taking away from the focal point of the vest. So I'm going to do this along the entire bottom part of my vest, and then I'll meet you back here, and hopefully by then I've figured out what kind of buttons I want to add on. Okay, let's talk buttons. This might have been my downfall. So I had this great idea of using these vintage buttons that I have and attaching them and using those as the buttons. But when I did so, I just had these weird flappy little gaps in between my buttons, which no one likes. So then I was like, you know what, let me crochet some buttons. So then I crocheted some buttons and I attached them, but then they were way too big. And then I was like, okay, well, I can crochet some buttons, but just make them a little smaller. So that's exactly what I did. I crocheted some buttons and then I attached them, and I don't really think they look that good. And in hindsight, I should have just added a buttonhole trim onto the vest, but apparently that didn't occur to me when I was making this. So this is what we've got going on, and yeah, I'll probably change it, but for the sake of time and for the sake of this video, this is what we're working with, okay? Okay, do a better job than I did. All right, so now we're gonna make the ruffle that is going to be on the strap, and when I tried this on, I just marked out using stitch markers exactly where I want the ruffle to lay. I'm gonna take my yellow yarn and start at my stitch marker, attach my yarn, and then make a half double crochet in that same space. Then I'm just going to keep half double crocheting all the way down until I reach my next stitch marker. All right, so I half double crocheted all the way to my stitch marker. Now I'm going to chain 3, which counts as a double crochet to my work. And I'm going to do 3 double crochets in this first stitch for a total of 4 double crochets, including my chain 3. And in every single stitch, I'm going to make 4 double crochets. And then we should get a nice ruffle once we're all done. Okay, I'm just doing my last stitch, and then I'm going to fasten this off. And there we have it. We have this cute little ruffle, and you can kind of play around with this and shape it how you would like. And yeah, ruffles are done. Anyway, I'm gonna take care of this, and then I'll show you the final result of this vest. Woo! Final thoughts on the project. I think this looks better in person than it does on camera. I love the granny squares. I think they turn out really cute, but I still think my like button situation is holding me back. I feel like I'm going to have to redo that at some point in the future. Also, I could not find a cute outfit for this vest. This is the only outfit that I can come up with, and it's a basic white turtleneck and jeans. How boring. I think I have to buy like one of those milkmaid dresses to like really give this vest like the moment and the outfit that it deserves. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Overall, I think it's fine, but you know, we can always tweak, we can always improve, we can always find a better outfit. And if I make any tweaks to this vest, I'll probably post it on my Instagram. So go follow me over there to stay up to date with all of my shenanigans, and make sure to like and subscribe for good and mediocre crochet content. Bye. I'm not selling myself very well.